All right. We got a couple of people coming on here. So we are getting things set up to do this both live and live streamed and recorded. So a lot of complicated things taking place as we're getting set up. All right. So we are live. Hello, everybody. Hello, fellow growth enthusiasts. My name is Brett Sklar. This is a show for CEOs, for VCs, for chief revenue officers, and for CMOs as we talk about growth for B2B tech companies and growth for our community as a whole. Like I said, I'm Brett Sklar, managing partner here at Grow Powerful, where we have assembled the greatest growth minds in all of B2B tech. And I truly mean that. We have some of the most amazing people as a part of this team. And today's conversation will actually show why that's so important. I'm here with my show producer and marketing manager and the Icmo whisperer, Anna Anderson. And this is a solo show today, as I didn't want to harm any others in the discussion today. Today's show is going to be a bit on the gritty side. It's going to be no holds barred. It's going to be a bit of a throat punch to certain people who don't like what I have to say. And guess what? That is okay. I don't know. There's some things I'm kind of pissed off about. And this topic is important to me, and I'll definitely share why that is. So I know you're just coming back from Labor Day holiday. Most of you can, barely even get through your emails and get through your coffee this morning. But I promise you that you will learn a lot from this. And if for some reason you get onto this show a little bit late, no worries. We've got it recorded. We can send it to you in a lot of different ways. Quick programming note, we're live streamed. We're on our podcast, our YouTube channel. We're now on LinkedIn Live, our blog. We're basically everywhere. So stay tuned with us, follow us, and connect with us through our LinkedIn newsletter. There's a lot of great stuff we share there. If you have questions or comments during the show, let me know. We're watching the feed, and we're going to answer those questions towards the end of my rant, my rave, my rage about this topic. So the title today of our topic, let's dive in. The title is Beware of Agencies Advertising CMO Services. But I actually think it needs to be a little bit more evolving and a little bit more direct. And it should have read, Beware of Fake Fractional CMOs. Beware of fake fractional CMOs. And I'm going to talk about why that is and why it's such a frustration for me. There's no question that the rise of the fractional economy has been amazing. It's helped companies out. It's allowed fractional leadership. There's some great stories I'm going to share during this about companies that are embracing fractional leadership, but especially for B2B tech companies that are growing and may not know exactly the type of CMO they need. This model is great. It makes a lot of sense. However, there are now two different factions that are promoting themselves as fractional CMOs, and they're not. And it's not only causing confusion in the market, it's a flat out lie. It wastes people's money. It wastes people's time, and it's giving a bad name to the idea, the philosophy, the religion of fractional CMOs, and I want it to stop. So this is a warning to every CEO, every VC, every chief revenue officer, and others out there who are leading the charge. It's also a warning to you, fake CMOs out there that are a part of the problem. I promise you, it will backfire on you. I promise you, it will bite you in the ass like a shark from Jaws. So let's dive in and talk about those two different factions. One of them is very dangerous, and the other one is just somewhat misrepresenting. So the first group, we're going to call them the Wannabes. And I'm going to tell you a story. At Grow, we just started a new engagement with a client. We were not the first group promoting ourselves as fractional CMOs. And we were not the first ones to get in front of this company to offer services. And unfortunately, the people that were in there that were advertising themselves as fractional CMOs sucked at it. They sucked really bad. And it's a shame because the CEO of this company actually is one of the biggest visionaries I know and has most of his executive team being served by fractional executives, a fractional HR, fractional CFO, a fractional CTO, which is an amazing, amazing guy who's had some great success, fractional CMO that we're delivering through one of our amazing ICMOs, and fractional sales. So this is a person that really has embraced and understands the fractional model, not just for CMOs, but for others. As I said, we were not the first person in there. We weren't even the first 3 that were in there. We are the 4th version because everyone seems to be advertising themselves as fractional CMOs. They actually had somebody that used to be a creative director for an agency that was stepped in and says, I'm a fractional CMO because I know how to do campaigns and messaging and all that stuff. That fractional CMO had a copywriter that advertised themselves as fractional CMOs in their LinkedIn profile. So we had a quote unquote fractional CMO coming in that was also working with another fractional CMO that was a copywriter. And 2 wrongs make a big pile of crap. So they worked with the client for a couple of months. They had really nothing to show for it. I actually got in and met with several of the team members of the company. They didn't even know the previous people existed. They did not meet with people to understand the company, to understand the team, to understand the programs. There were no campaigns that got out and into the public and were tested. There was just a bunch of messaging attempts that could not get off the ground. The CEO rightfully was frustrated as all get out and was starting to distrust the entire idea of a fractional CMO model. Now, that person trusted the fractional CFO because that's very cut and dry. They trusted the fractional CTO because there's almost nobody advertising fractional CTO services, and they happened to find an amazing one. But the fractional CMO model and the fractional CMO people that advertise themselves as such were giving this person a very bad taste in their mouth, and rightfully so. So I decided to look into it further. I found agencies. I actually set up Google alerts for fractional CMOs, virtual CMOs, interim CMOs, basically all the Google alerts I could find around these fractional type roles. And I found thousands of companies that were offering some type of fractional CMO service. So I took a look at about 100 of them. And here's what I found. And these are all agencies, whether it's a design agency, a campaign agency, a digital agency, a PR agency, social media agency, content writing agency, whatever it is, they all have the same formula. They show off their agency services on their website, but then also in the drop down of services, they also offer fractional CMO. Bullshit. They do not offer fractional CMO services. It's almost as if they went to some school or some mastermind to learn how to do this. It's a joke. It's a lie. It's false advertising from agencies who should not be doing false advertising. It needs to stop. Now let's shift for a moment. And so that's the wannabes. That's the people who are creating such a bad name for fractional CMOs. So then we're going to switch to the other side of the issue. And I'm going to call that group, actually, they're just, I'll tell you what I'm going to call them in a second, but they're overpaid consultants. Now, this side is not nearly as nefarious. They're not as corrupt. They're not as fictitiously representing themselves as the wannabes. But there's also a bit of a misrepresentation itself to the intended clients. I'm going to call this group retirement income. They're very experienced and incredibly capable people who have probably run large groups. They are likely a part of a larger fractional CMO organization. They're senior, they're proven, they're capable, but they tend to have engagements that look more like consultants than fractional CMOs, fixed engagements with long-term contracts, building strategy, not necessarily having the ability to roll up their sleeves and handle the tactics. And it might be good for some industries and company sizes that are bigger, that are consumer, that are things like manufacturing, that are retail, that are somewhat old world and traditional. But I and this audience that is listening, hopefully you're listening, we're focused on the emerging B2B technology arena. And that type of model is not a good fit for us. It's good for them, but not for us. These people, the retirement income people, are advisors, outsiders. They're not about the execution. They're about the strategy. It's good for some company leaders, but the reality is the people we work with need that balance of strategy and execution to grow. People who have been a part of the startup equation, who have built, run, and succeeded with marketing programs and marketing teams and know what it takes to get things from point A to point B, or in our case, to get from point B to like point J or H or I or, along the way into that growth phenomenon. So then let's pause for a second and let's talk about what I think and what our community needs from fractional chief marketing officers. And we're going to talk about it. And yes, this is going to be a bit of an ad about Grow and Grow Powerful and our amazing ICMOs and our process for finding those highly qualified and vetted fractional CMOs. But if you are a CEO or a VC or a chief revenue officer, somebody looking for true fractional marketing leadership, I'll tell you what we look for, and you can look for it too. Number one, they have to have operational experience as a full-time CMO for an emerging tech company. If you don't see that in their background, if you don't see that on the LinkedIn profile, and you don't know who the company is that they were a CMO for, there might be a problem. Number two, and again, this is all of our ICMOs, but it could be anybody that you recruit for a fractional CMO. They need to have had at least one strong and successful exit under their belt, being a part of a company that was acquired. That is essentially in the B2B technology arena for emerging companies, being acquired or getting a larger investment or some form of exit needs to be in their roster. They need to have been a part of the executive team. They need to have helped navigate those waters. They need to make sure that they understand the strategy and how to execute that type of exit. Number three, they need to know how to weave between strategy and tactics and have something to show for it. You need them to show you the examples. How did they do it? Why did they do it? What were the alternatives? They need to be able to get into the strategy and build a plan, but then also be the player coach. And the part of the player coach is to play. And that means managing virtual resources or full-time resources. That means finding the gaps that need to be solved and doing whatever it takes to get those needs resolved, whether that's finding a consultant, finding a contractor, finding somebody to help it, or just doing it themselves in areas that they're stronger in. Now, we have a good sized group of ICMOs, and we're at a good point. We're actually not adding any more. We've got a good foundation. And one of the things that I love about it is as we have engagements and one of our ICMOs may not be a good fit for a certain type of company or growth phase, we can always look at other ICMOs in our group to help take on that work. and to help with building a balance. So those are the 4 things I think that ICMOs need to have, that you need to be looking for a fractional CMO in order to be successful. If they don't have that, then there's a problem. If they have titles such as creative director, such as copywriter, graphic designer, developer, social media manager, blogger. And the biggest one has been SEO companies, search engine optimization companies, who advertise themselves as fractional CMOs. And I think that's, I think people that do that and advertise it for things like small businesses, small restaurants, other types of small businesses or very isolated businesses, it's not a bad idea. But again, I'm looking at it from the lens of the emerging B2B technology world. And I'm looking at it and seeing how much wasted money, how much stupid decisions are made, and how people are representing themselves and lying about what they're doing. So if you're thinking about a fractional CMO, number one, take a good look at someone before you bring them on as a fractional CMO. Make sure that their LinkedIn profile is really what it says you need. Number 2 is interview them like you're interviewing any employee. Yes, you can terminate somebody in a very short amount of time as a fractional CMO. You can also terminate an employee. And while they're not an actual employee, while they're not an actual, whatever, they are going to be a core part of your executive team. And you need to do the diligence to make sure that they are a good fit. You need to make sure that you work with the companies who can provide different types of ICMOs or fractional CMOs as you need them and as your strategy evolves. Do not sign up for long-term engagements. Nobody needs to be locked into something for a long period of time. In an emerging B2B technology company, 6 months is an entire lifetime. 3 months is like a fourth of a company's life in some cases. Anything more than a month of commitment needs to be seriously looked at if it's going to solve the problem. Ask around about them. Make sure that they can actually move between the strategy and the operations, the strategy and the tactics. They know just as much about building a plan as they know about executing a plan. And they're willing to move fast. And again, especially for B2B technology companies that are emerging, fast is the most important thing. So that's my rant. That's my rage. That's my rage coming out. I was actually nicer on this one than I thought I would be. But I don't like seeing this. And I almost want to go to every one of those companies that pops up in my Google alerts and really ask them to prove themselves. And I don't think that they could. So here's the questions that come up and we've on this topic. And we're going to cover, I think our next live stream is going to talk about, when to hire a CMO versus when to use a fractional CMO. And so we're going to go into depth on some of these questions during that session, but we can go ahead and get started now. So one of the questions that I hear over and over again is, how much should an ICMO cost? Well, that's a good question. And obviously it depends. A lot, we build our, I can tell you what we do at Grow, and Grow is all about the monthly engagements. So it's less about the hours and more about what we can get done within that monthly time frame. So our engagements are going to be anywhere between, I don't know, as low as like $3,000 and as high as $25,000 per month, depending on how much you need and how fast you need to go. But we can be very affordable when we need to be. And we can be incredibly, we can be big enough to scale when we need to be as well on a very fast basis. Another question I get asked a lot is, where do you find the ICMOs? When is there, so where do you find them? How do you find them? Well, I feel pretty lucky that I've got a really strong network, and especially on LinkedIn. And so the cool thing is I don't find people. I found that people find me, and that's a lot of fun to be in that position. Another question, when is the right time for a full-time CMO versus a fractional CMO? And I will tell you that well, first of all, we're going to cover this on our next live stream that's going to happen in about 2 weeks. But to answer this short question is, once you've figured out how to grow and you've built a good growth path, you'll know when it's time to hire a full-time person, and you'll know a lot more about the background of that person. And unless you know what the background and the capabilities of that person are, you should always go fractional. You should always go ICMO until you know what you're doing. Another question is, if we really like one of our ICMOs, can we hire them? And every fractional CMO is going to have a different answer to that. A lot of people have left the full-time gig because they want the flexibility and don't want to go back. But we would not stop somebody from taking a full-time job if their fractional relationship worked out really well and they wanted to go to full-time. Another question, do we need to use you or people like you to find a fractional CMO? I would like to say yes, but the answer is no. You can find somebody directly. You can do enough searches. You can use LinkedIn. The challenge is, if somebody doesn't work out, can you pivot easily with an individual than with a company like Grow? And the answer is probably not. The other question is, will you find a good roster of amazing people that are battle tested and proven and know how to scale an operation like our ICMOs do? Maybe, but we found them. So we think it'll be easier to work with us to help get that model going off the ground. Another question is that we talk a lot about B2B. What about B2C or direct to consumer? I think the model is very similar. And I think that the world of B2B and consumer is graying a lot more. The lines are overlapping a lot more, especially for SaaS companies where you've got price points that are in the tens or the hundreds of dollars a month. It can actually operate more like a consumer company. And a lot of our ICMOs have the success with SaaS, have the success with cloud, and know how to operate and drive awareness, drive interest, and drive demand through either of those channels. And so I think because those lines are graying a lot more, or they're overlapping a lot more, we can serve both of those communities. So that's it. That's the show. That's where we, really wanted to share our warning, our caution, our beware of the fake CMOs. It just, as you can tell, it really frustrates me and pisses me off that we have to deal with this, but we do, and it is what it is. Okay, so if you like what we have to say, check us out. We're at growpowerful.io. Subscribe to our show, which is called Grow Up with Grow, on your favorite podcast. Follow us on LinkedIn. Search for us on YouTube. But basically, it's pretty easy to find us if you want to find us. That's it. Thank you, and we'll see you the next time.